Uh, we are back. I guess if you are listening to this now, you are from the future. Buy Bitcoin or sell Bitcoin if you're from the future, but you missed the opening intro. I don't know, anything. Anyway, moving on. So I'm going to kind of move this all around, right? First off, I probably just want to get rid of this. This is my preference. Like, you guys can do whatever you want, but if you are wondering why I'm doing this, it's just because I just want to kind of reduce some clutter, some spring cleaning. So I'm going to go down to our script tag. Boom, boom, boom. Cool. And then, so here we have this constants. I just have, these are my variables. Move this all over. Cool. And then I'm going to have like functions here. And I'm not saying this is like the better way to do it or the wrong way. This is just like the way I like to do it within these labs. So take for it what it is. Cool, so we have this event listener, and that's just toggling that. I actually want to pull this function out of my event listener. So I would do that here, and we can just call this, I'm going to call it just handle new toy form, handle add new toy. Toy form show. That's probably better. Are you guys all okay with this like arrow function syntax? No? Have you seen arrow functions? Yeah, right? Okay, so here it could be the same if I said function, handle toy show form, or toy form show. This is just the same thing. I just have an arrow function here. I'm setting equal to a const, right? So like const this equals the arrow function. That's all I'm really doing. And here, I can just take the guts of this and put it here. And even more so, I can take this and this is just an if else. So like for me, I'm like, oh, that's like a nice thing. I could probably make it a ternary statement. Cool. And are you guys okay with ternary statements? And if not, we can quickly go over them. This is just, so the ternary operator has two distinct symbols in it. It has the question mark followed by a colon. And how this works is the thing before the question mark is your conditional, right? And if that conditional is true, the thing on the left of the colon, here's the colon here, so the thing on the left of the colon will run. If this thing is false, the thing on the right of the colon will run, right? So we are setting add toy equal to false. So the first time this runs, the first time we click add toy, we are reassigning to equal the opposite of false, and the opposite of false is true. And so when line 17 hits, if add toy is true, Linda, what side of this do you think runs, left or right?
If it's false, you said?
If it's true?
If it's true, it's going to run the left side.
Yeah, so it will set it to block. And then the next time I click, we are setting add toy equal to the opposite of what it is. So if add toy is true, the opposite of true is false. And then when this runs when line 17 runs again, this will be what happens. So that's what is controlling that toggling feature, right? And we saw that in the browser when we went from block to none every time I hit add new toy. You guys all okay with that? Cool. All right, and then here I can just call, right, handle toy form show. So that's kind of the outline of it. It looks similar to what we did the other night. Like that's because I like to just kind of separate stuff this way. It makes me, when I started on something, know where things are.
I thought yesterday when you had inbuilt functions,
Oh, I'm sorry. I had these in the wrong spot. Thank you. Yeah, and we don't have any functions to invoke, right? Because we're not doing anything at this point right now, right? Like it's just the same page and it still works the same. So we essentially haven't made any progress in these last 10 minutes. So you've wasted your time, person from the future. No, but I just rearranged stuff. Okay, so now what do we want to do here? Let's go into the README and say that it says all of the toy data is stored in db.json. And if we look, it is right here. And what does this look like? Yeah, it looks like a hat. It's JSON, but it looks like it's essentially just a hat, an object, right? So that's how all the data is stored. And then I already have JSON server, which is a node package, similar to like in Ruby you have gems. I already have that installed, so I don't need to do this first part. But to start the server, I would just do this. And it's essentially saying, watch this file for changes. You know, this is allowing me to like make this server alive, essentially. Cool? I never actually stopped it from here. So I could just do that to run the server. And it says it's running on localhost 3000/toys. So now I should be able to go to localhost 3000/toys. And we see it here, right? So we've kind of have our own very quick and dirty backend running at this point. Any questions so far? Sweet.
Oh, no.
What's up?
I was gonna ask like why do you need a server, but it makes sense though.
Yeah, we're gonna be pulling from it and posting to it and so forth. So it says this will create a server storing all of the lost toy data at this route right here, right? And then we can check out a specific one if we care about that specific one. So the first thing it wants us to do is reach out to this API, and from the data that comes back, create like a toy element for each of these things that come back, right? If there's 9 toys, create like these card type pieces, kind of like the Pokemon lab that we just saw. So knowing that, like I don't need to know so far in advance like exactly what they want, but what can I discern, like what do I probably need to do first here? Like where's like the comfort spot I want to get to in my fetch?
You want to be able to look at the data that you're getting?
Yeah, look at it where?
In the console?
Yeah, like I ultimately want to just get to like a console.log of the data. So I just want to reach out to this API and confirm that what I'm getting back is actually accurate, but also that I'm doing so correctly. So I can build my fetch. And here, I can probably just make a function called const fetch toy data, right? And then I just build my fetch in here. So fetch, I think I had this on my clipboard. Nope. Cool. And then you guys want to walk me through the rest of the fetch? So I'll just call on random people. Max, what would be the next part?
Then let's call it RESP. Then RESP.json open brackets.
Cool. And what do you say? Like, what are we doing here?
We're getting this object, calling down this object from the fetch. But now we have to do something with that, like show it in either console.log or perform a function on it to render.
Yeah. So essentially, we're reaching out to this API. When this promise is fulfilled, we are then passing that promise, what comes back into this .then. And from here, which is what you can expect, it's JSON, and we're parsing that JSON with the resp.json. Question, Linda?
No, just making sure. I was trying to guess what you were going to say beforehand, sorry.
Oh, okay.
Just to make sure.
And the fetches all kind of look the same once you get used to that, right? Once you get that muscle memory. The next thing you would do is another .then, and like John had mentioned, for me, I always just go to my comfort zone and just set up exactly the same every single time. So I take that data, which I can probably, since I'm fetching a bunch of toy data, I'm just going to call this toys data. And like I said, my goal is just to console.log the toys data. One additional thing I think you guys have started to branch into is what's called .catch. And that's just going to, if you do have any errors, it will, like, quote unquote, catch those errors, and then you can do something with those. So just out of habit, it's a good practice to always end these with a .catch, and then also console.log errors if you have them. Make sense? So every time you write, I write a fetch, a fetch just that it's a GET request, it's always the same. It's the fetch, the address, the first dot, then I'm parsing the data, the second dot, then I'm console.logging, and then the third piece is I'm doing a .catch and console.logging errors. Cool? All right, so let's run this, and if I refresh, nothing's happening, right? And why is this?
Because you haven't called the function.
Yeah, I haven't invoked it, right? I forgot to do that. Sweet. And here we go. We have all of our data, right? So that feels pretty good. Even before we understand everything of what they want us to do, we at least know this much. They want us to reach to an API, and we've successfully shown that we have done so, right? So now we have all this data at our disposal. Cool. Yes?
I'm having this error, it's like not,
Is this for your JSON server when you try to run it?
yeah.
And does it say this is something you might want to talk to Dave about?
Let me Slack you something right now.
Oh,
Yeah, we went through the same thing.
okay.
Like you don't have the rights or admin rights.
Yeah.
Yeah. It might. How long did it take to resolve that for you, Dave?
2 minutes.
Okay. You guys want to take a quick 2-minute sit around break? I need another beer. So.
What have we done so far? Sorry.
Yeah. So all we've done. My code looks a little different from yours, just because I kind of formatted it in the way I like it to be. I took out the DOM content loaded add event listener, and I just put a defer tag in instead here. So I don't have it wrapped in anything. And then I just separated stuff here. I pulled out all of this logic from the event listener and put it in its own function. And then I made the if else a ternary, just to kind of make it more concise. And that's really it. So what we've done so far is we have this toggle add toy, which is set to false, but this is basically toggling whether or not the display of the toy form is block or none, right? So if we go here, that's at block, that's at none, and you can see that this changes. It's none right now, it changed to block, and vice versa.
I'm just like missing a semicolon somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't want to try.
Go back to
Well,
So like, what I did was I copied what I wrote down, trying to scratch a couple ones, so I did change this.
Now try installing. No, that's like another install. So try installing try installing
line 81.
Oh, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, it'll take a minute, but you're good to go.
Okay, thank you.
All right, you guys want to hop back into it?
Does that mean that I need to update my node?
You have issues with this too, Kenan? Can you? Sorry, what was that?
The arrow, like when we do the arrow notation,
Yeah.
is what declares the function.
Yeah. So we are declaring our function here on the side of it, and we're setting this variable equal to what that declared function is.
Right. So
Oh, like what is?
the actual arrow is the declaration of it.
Yes, maybe.
Because I mean that's. I don't know. To me, it seems.
I think that's the most. That's the only important piece you would
That's the
need.
only part that's different.
Yeah.
Like if we change this, it would say function that empty.
Yeah, that makes sense. So this is like similar to the function keyword, which is probably why they have it highlighted as purple too. You guys want to get back to it? Cool. Okay, so, and let's just see what happens if I do this and put like an F here. We should hit our errors, right? And the cool thing is, yeah, see we're console.login.
Just wanna make sure you're still recording.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's gonna be a
really awkward 2 minutes.
I mean, it's honestly just probably like Juan and Andy listening to this, so. Hello, Juan and Andy. Sorry about that. Yeah, I don't think I'm going to win any awards based off this this code challenge. Cool. So if we look at what they want us to do here, let me change this back so I don't forget. Okay.
There, I thought we just got all the stuff.
I intentionally put an F in front of our endpoint to make it, yeah. So basically, it wants us to create an H2, an image, a P, a button, right? And like right now, I'm thinking, okay, I can create all those things. I can append all that stuff. It kind of seems like a pain in the ass in a way because to create an H2, I'm going to have to say set a variable equal to like a create element H2. I'm then going to have to assign it like something, right? Like some inner HTML, and then I'm going to have to append it to something, and then I'm going to do the same for image, same for P, same for button. So if I do 3 times for each thing, and there's 4 of them, that's like 12 lines of code I'm going to have to write. I think for me, like they give us this, I'm just going to copy and paste this, right? So if you remember there's those 2 paths that we can take. One is to use string interpolation and just literally write the stuff out. The other is to create the elements on the DOM individually and append them individually, right? And I think here is a good spot to leverage that, as Robert Frost would say, the road less traveled. Is that right? Okay. Everyone, you couldn't hear it on the recording, but everyone laughed. I think something, yeah, it was just delayed. Okay. So we can just take this, copy and paste it. So I have, and I know that, okay, I have all this data coming back, and for each of these things, I want to like create a card, right? So I'm probably going to create another function. Const, and let's just call this like render toy card. And I can expect, like this is something that I'm going to call up here, right? Because I'm probably going to want to do something with all that data we logged earlier. And so I would be passing the toys data. Cool. And what would be like the process? Anyone want to volunteer what they think is like kind of the next step?
Don't you want to return the string you just, like, string up the HTML you just did?
Yeah. So maybe, sorry, and what?
String up the HTML that you just got,
Okay.
and then figure out, like, where, because, like, we're going to need to figure out, like, where all the information that we're getting from the toys data, like, where we're going to need to put that into this.
Sure. And let me just call this here, and just so I have that debugger. So if I fetch toys, as soon as I reload, we're going to hit this debugger here, right? And we're passing in toys data, so I have access to that. So if I reload here, we're in the debugger, and I can look at what is toys data. It's what we just logged before. It's an array of objects, right? And so for each of those elements in that array, we want to create one of those cards, right? So we probably want to like do some iteration here with that data we pass in.
For each.
Yeah, we could use a for each. So we have toys data, and then do a for each, and then using arrow functions again. It looks a little similar to Ruby with blocks. We can call each of these things toy data. And for each piece of these, we can do what?
Is that what we would use that div and copy?
Yeah, let's set a variable. So like const toy card equals, and then in JavaScript with string literals, it would be backticks, right? And then we can paste that in. Let me move this up.
Is there a reason why you're using, wouldn't that be a let? Because, never mind. I just figured out the answer to my own question.
Yeah, because every time we iterate through, we're creating a whole new variable. Yep, so we're never actually going to have to change it. Sweet. And so we have all this here. Let's just look at the data. So one of these things we have, I'm just going to copy and paste this in. So it looks like we have name, ID, Woody, right? So toy data is like what one of these things are as we iterate over. Does that make sense? So instead of Woody, we probably want to do what? Yeah, toy data dot name. What'd you say? I think you said that, right? You said toy card dot name. Oh yeah, toy data, because each of these things is we're calling it toy data here. Yep. Sweet. And then the image URL, I think we have that provided as well. And then what? Likes. So it says 4 likes here, so we can just replace this with the string literal. Cool. And then it looks like we have class, like button. I think we want to leave that as probably like a styling thing. And then we can leave this as just like a little heart. Sound good?
One question.
Yeah.
So, I get confused sometimes when there's like an argument that's a placeholder or something that you're actually passing into it.
Yep.
Like the toys data line 16, and toys data line 20.
Yes. Are those related essentially? This is what I'm passing in. I can call this. This is an argument that I'm passing in. This is a parameter I'm defining in this function. I can call this toys data. I can just call this like nix var, right? And that wouldn't affect it at all. You notice I changed it right here as well though too, because this is saying I'm defining this function with a parameter, and whatever's passed into this function when called, it's going to take the place of next var, and it's going to take the place here, right? I just am using the same name because it helps me as I code this along. What can I expect to pass this? I'm going to call it toys data here. I'm passing it as toys data, and so therefore it kind of just makes sense in my parameter to name it toys data as well. But I don't need to name it the same thing.
You just know that you're eventually going to be passing it into that placeholder.
Yeah, and what is it that we're dealing with here, right? We call it toys data here because it's an object of parsed data that has to do with toys. Not just one, but multiple, so we call it toys data, even though it sounds weird. And then so I pass it in, toys data, and then when I define it, what can this function expect to receive? Toys data, or I can maybe call it like toys object, It just kind of helps in the naming convention to let me know as I read this what's happening without actually seeing the code run.
Sorry, this is an elementary question. So
Yeah.
What's happening on line 20, this is in itself a new function? Render toy card is a function?
Yes, yeah. So I'm using an arrow function. With arrow functions, you can assign them like variables, right? So I'm assigning a variable const render toy card and setting it equal to this arrow function.
And the toys data is the argument.
Which what's that?
The toys data is the argument for
It's the parameter. When you define it, it's a parameter.
Yeah.
When you call it, it's the argument.
And this is uniquely something that we didn't do in Ruby because like we have const now. Like you wouldn't want to name a function with let.
I can do it as let.
I mean,
I can do it let. It won't change it, but if I do something like here,
Right.
so like someone else might hop on this project and be like, oh, they might not know what render toy card is, and might say like render toy card equals this and reassign it by accident.
Right. And like I guess my point is like whenever you make a function, you don't want it to be reassignable.
Yeah, I would say for the thought process, if you recall in Rails routes, it's best to like limit the amount of routes, and as you need them, apply them rather than this like shotgun approach and give all the resources to all the routes. It's kind of a similar approach.
Is that, so I just realized, is that adding like the fact that we can't rewrite this function?
Yeah, it doesn't let us reassign what render toy card is. And if I try to, so just so you guys can see, if I then say like render toy card equals Nick, and we run this, we should get an error, not that error. Let's just comment out.
Because like before we didn't have any way to make it so a function couldn't be overwritten.
Oh, you know what? I think it's this. Sorry, 1 second. So we get right here, assignment to a constant variable. Like it throws an error. And you said before we didn't have any way
We didn't have a way to make it so functions couldn't be overwritten.
in Ruby.
Right, until now that we have this constant method.
Well, yes. I mean, you define them as like def, method, whatever. Yeah, but similar to, I guess.
Right, because you could have always rewritten them in Ruby.
I think so.
You could have overwritten a function.
Yeah, I think
now
you.
that we have like this const equals that,
Right.
and that const will always equal that function.
Yeah, it would be a good blog post because it used to be ES5 had var, and then they changed it and separated it into two different variable names of let and const, and that has to do with the scoping issue. I don't want to get into it now because I think it's kind of outside of this, but if you guys are looking for a blog post, that's something I think that would heighten your understanding of the differences between them. But yeah, don't get too confused of how I'm declaring it here. I could also, if I didn't want to use an arrow function, I could just say function, render toy card, and kind of move this stuff, like this.
I find that this so unintuitive. How that's set up.
How
So you're setting render toy card to equal toys data, but then again, you can pass it in as an argument in line 16. Like that is not computed.
This here?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm setting render toy card to equal this arrow function, the whole thing, right? And if it's multi-line, so it's a little tough to see, but I could also write an arrow function like this is an arrow function, this piece right here, right? And if I want to be more explicit about it, right? Like now do you see how this looks just like this here? And then if I want to be even more explicit about it and match them exactly, then like that's the same thing, all of this. This. Cool? Okay. So I'm going to take this away. So if I look here, what am I doing? I'm creating a constant toy card that's equal to this entire string literal, right? So I do that for every single object. What could I do? Maybe I won't throw this out there. Well, yeah, does anyone have any leads of like what could I do with that? Each time I do that, what do I want to do?
You want to assign it a place to live.
Yeah, assign it a place to live, and we can go like a throwback and use concatenation for this, right? We can, if we are looking at inner HTML of a container and that current inner HTML is nothing, if I just do like a plus equals, I add that in there, right? And the next time we iterate over, we create a new constant. We create a toy card. That's that new string literal. We do a plus equals and it adds it to the bottom, adds it to the bottom, adds it to the bottom, right? So we just kind of build this huge long string of inner HTML that we are assigning inside of our container. Does that make sense at this point? Okay. Maybe in practice we can clear it up. So where do I want to add it to? Let's look. Let's add a new toy. It looks like there is a div with the ID of toy collection. And let's confirm that. Right here. So this is our div of toy collection. So we just want to like add stuff in here, right? Yes, thank you. I was wondering why that wasn't working. So this is our toy collection. So this is what we want to be concatenating all of our our big long HTML string. Cool. Questions? I feel like there's questions.
So when we're, can you go back to the
Hmm?
So when you say you're gonna concatenate, you're like, as we're going through each toy data, we're just concatenating the toy data like at 0, all that concatenating with the toy data at 1?
We're just going to continuously add it. We're going to add this to our container. Let's work through it, and then I'll put a debugger in, and I can show you. It's probably easier to show than explain. What was that? Oh. We'll call it toy container. Sweet. So toy collection. And here I can call toy collection. Call that toy container. Plus equals toy cart. Right? So I'm going to put a debugger here just so we can see what happens each time. So we ran through the first time, right? It ran through this render toy card. It went all the way down here. It created the toy card consonant. It then assigned or it added that toy card to the inner HTML of this container. Are we okay with that so far? So now and then we stopped right here in the debugger. So if I look at what toy container is right now, it's this div, and then inside it has this one element, right? Because we set the inner HTML equal to that entire string literal, which was all of this.
And this is one of those times where inner text won't work because of the fact that we're showing an entire HTML part.
Yeah, and let's switch this to inner text.
It's just
It will work. It will just work in a different way.
Yeah, it's just going to show the HTML.
Yeah, it's just that.
Where did you get toy container from?
I defined toy container up here, and I set it as it's pulling the ID of toy collection, which is that div here.
Okay. And you're doing that outside of.
Just at the very top, because
Okay.
in JavaScript with scoping, you have access. Inner methods or functions have access to outer variables, unlike Ruby.
Do you not have the DOM concept loaded?
I took that away, and I just did a defer tag.
Okay.
Yep. All right, let's change this back. So, Linda, what's happening here is that was that?
Can I guess then?
Yeah.
So we have the constant toy card, and when we iterate through each part of our array, we're gonna make that card, and then we're gonna shovel it into, we're gonna be adding every time into toy container.
Yes.
And then once we go to the next part of the array, we're gonna create another card and add it again.
Yes. And what are we populating this data with?
What are we populating?
Yeah. Like where does this come from?
With like toy data that likes.
Yeah.
We're getting it from like, can I ask a question on it? Like, I feel like there's I feel like I'm gonna answer it wrong. Like toy data is from, we have
Yeah, it's one element of that array.
Yeah.
It's the particular element we happen to be on within that loop, right? So this is a collection of 8 different elements. Each of those elements are objects that contain toy data. As we iterate through, the first time we iterate through, toy data here is that first element, and we're setting toy card equal to a string literal, and using the first element's name here to populate this, and the first element's image and likes and so forth, right? So this is just creating a string, and we can even look. Let's refresh back here. If I just look at what toy card is right now, you can see it's just a string. It's a string. Cool. And it has Woody. Woody happens to be the first one. It has its image PNG. It has his number of likes, which is 5. And then if I look at what toy container is right now, it has the one thing. Cool. So let's step through. So right now we went through one time out of this array of 8 things. If I hit play, we'll go to the back top and we'll be on the second element, right? And now if I look at what is toy card this time, it is Buzz, right? 8 likes, all of this. And then if I look at toy container now, because the debugger happens after we concatenate that string to it, there's now 2 of these things. Cool? Are we good with that so far? Any questions? Or like any aspects of it that you're like slightly uncomfortable with? Because I know it's a lot. Yeah.
Nice. Can I just see your variables again?
At the top?
Yeah. Okay.
Sweet. So if I take the debugger out and we just let this run, so what's like kicking all this off? It's this one invoked function, right? Fetch toy data. That's the only thing that we're invoking so far. This is our fetch request. Our fetch request is then calling, it's invoking another function, render toy card, and it's passing in the object of toy data that it received from that fetch. And render toy card is then iterating over each element, it's passing an array of toy data that we received from the fetch. And then we are in render toy card iterating over each element of the array, which is an object, and we're building this string literal for every single element and then concatenating it to the toy container. And that's so far where we are, right? So we should have like 8 things on the page when we refresh.
If we can't see the actual pictures, like, did we break something?
It might be, what is it, just like a broken image?
It has like a little like thumbnail,
Yeah.
but it's just like a little, like,
Do you have, is this a different color on your screen? Do you have that set up correctly with the string interpolation?
what's normal?
Do you have quotation marks around it?
I don't have quotation marks, but like I have it.
Is your server running? Yeah, it would be at this point.
Yes.
Here, let me just swing over there really quick. Give me another 2-minute break.
Talked to our doctor, he said we can get extra time on the jump.
Oh, that's sweet.
Is it working now?
You want that?
Yes.
Hey, Dave,
Cool, yeah.
for your variables,
Yes.
did you create the add button in toy form, or was that given to us?
That was given to us. The add button and toy form, we have both of them.
Actually, only Mr. Batia had it and both.
Those are the only ones that render?
Those are the ones that are rendering.
Can you,
I can see the likes that the rest have and like the names.
that's odd.
Disregard, it's fine.
Okay, we can look at it after. Sweet. So we have all these here. The like buttons, they don't do anything, right? They don't change likes. I think that might be the next thing they want us to do. Oh, they want us to add toy info to the card. No, we did that. Add a new toy. Okay, you guys are ready to step into this? So it says when a user clicks on the add new toy button, a post request is sent to this here, and it should conditionally render. Cool. So we'll have to create a fetch request. That fetch request will, unlike the get fetch, will have a second argument, right? Which is our post object. So we can do that. And I think it's going to be, if I remember, yeah. And then we want to pull this data in from what the user types in and then include that within our fetch. So where do you guys think we should start? Yeah, like a function that fetches it, right? Sweet. What do you guys want to call this function?
Post toy data.
Post? Yeah, we'll just like post new toy. Cool. And what did we say we're doing with this? Yep, it's fetch. Let's post it to that address.
How do you see where this goes?
Where it posts to?
Yeah.
It tells us. We are posting to HTTP
Or
localhost.
Not where it posts to, like where your index.html opens to. To actually view your page.
You can open that file up in Chrome. You can go to your terminal and type in open index.html and it will open up for you.
In your terminal, act on the browser, right?
Yeah, because here is just my file path. Cool. So this is taking a second argument, and I can build everything in here, right? I can have an entire object built out. However, it makes sense to put it separate and probably put it into a function because I don't want to hard code data. We can just build it. So if I have like post ob. So what are the three key value pairs of like an object we need to send through for a post? Method is the first one. And we want this to be post, right? What was the next one? Body and header. Yeah, so let's do header. Headers, right?
Why headers versus header?
It's one or the other. Why, I don't know. I forget which one it is. Actually, this would tell us here. I think it's headers. Yeah, headers. And headers is an object that has two key value pairs, content, type. And this is just stuff like you kind of, for now, have to memorize, right? Application/JSON. For everything you use in this course and until you do other things, right? It would just be this content type application/JSON and then accept application/JSON.
Like this is gonna be one of those things that disappears next week.
This is muscle memory stuff, though, for right now. I mean, as you get more into it, you can start to distinguish between, like, why am I writing this? What is it for? And if you're curious about it now, by all means, read through it. But I know there's a lot of things on your mind as you're trying to internalize all of this, and sometimes it helps just to know, oh, I can just plainly memorize this aspect of it.
What about Google to check those keys that you're getting?
I would probably Google fetch post request.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we have headers, and then our last one here, you guys had said body, right? And we want to do a JSON.parse, and we're going to pass that an object of which we don't know yet, right? And so if I hard code this, and I could do like name Tom, right? I don't know what the other one is. Let's look. Name image likes. So like image, like blah, blah, blah. and then likes 3. That's fine. I can keep this as an object. But if I don't know what this information is offhand, I would need to do what with this?
Make it a function which accepts.
Yeah. Yeah, make it a function which accepts arguments, right? And that way I can pass in data.
Do you need the whole post?
No, I just mean this, yeah, the post ob.
Okay.
Because right now, because I know when Reza first did this, I think he just used an object because he hard-coded. But I can just make this a function. So to do so, I can say const post ob equals here, right? And then this is, I've kind of like utilized my open and closing curlies here for my function. So I still have to put those in for my object, right? Make sense? And then if I were to run this here, let's just invoke it. Console log post object. Uh, 43. Am I missing a comma?
Can you kind of just run through your parentheses and curly braces?
Yeah.
I guess, because they're all over the place.
Yep. Let me just make sure. I want to see where that error is coming from. So here I have, this is an object, right? Open and closing. This is just an entire object.
Okay.
If it was less stuff here, let's just say it was one key value pair, I could just write it like this. Key, right?
Okay.
Same thing, but it's a little more, so it's multi-line. And we have the key of method, value post, key of headers, value of an object here, key of body, value of JSON.parse, and then an object here. Right? Although I don't know, let me comment that out too. I don't know why it's giving me that error on line 43. Let me know if you guys can see anything. I have the comment here. Let's just do this. Okay.
In the README, it says that there's an accept.
Oh, do I have accepts? No, I have accept.
Okay, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
The accept does not have quotes around it in the README.
That shouldn't matter. Yeah, I mean that wouldn't matter here. I feel like it's a syntax thing where I have something. You know what? It might be because I stopped halfway through. Let me see. That closes. That closes there. Oh, I'm not. I wasn't invoking. Let me see if that does anything. Okay, well, let's just move on from this because I don't know where that is at. This is my post object, though. We'll see if the syntax thing bites me in the ass somewhere. Okay.
So that's supposed to be a function, the post object? I thought it was just an object.
It is. We turn it into a function, just so we can return. So what I was trying to get through, I don't know why I have some type of syntax error somewhere here. I'm not quite sure why. But what we want to do, because we want to pass it data and dynamically create this returned object. Yep.
Where you just want to pass that whole object, right?
Yeah.
So why would you make post object a function?
That way we can pass it arguments, right? So we would have this like user or toy name, toy image. We can just call it name, image, and likes. Name, image, likes, and then we can pass it in here. And that way we can have it return this object, name, image, likes.
Oh, okay.
Right?
So is that the issue?
Oh!
Have to return.
No, it might have been, was it there? Maybe not, hang on, let's see. No. It wasn't the return, I don't think. I'm honestly not sure right now. We can try this though. So that was like what I was trying to lead up to, is that if we have something, an object here that we don't want to hard code, we want to pass in data, we can make it a function, and then when we invoke it, we can pass in name, image, likes, and we can have it return an object where we then pass in the name, image, and likes to be part of this body.json.parse.
Wait, sorry, so it worked with that post object with 3 arguments?
Yeah. As of right now, we might restructure it because I'm not sure what it's going to ask us. I do want to see if that. Okay, it's gone now. I don't know what it was, honestly. Cool. So then just doing the rest of the normal stuff. Let's do a dot then. This is going to be response.json. And this would be like new toy data. And we can just console.log it. I know we've done a lot of coding without checking things yet, right? And this is a big chunk of like info here too. Are there questions of like what is happening? I mean, I'm sure there are, but where's like
Yeah, what is
the confusion? Yeah. So when we post with a fetch, we want to pass in an object, right? Oh, we're all comfortable with that? And that object's going to have contain 3 key value pairs. It's going to contain a method. It's going to contain headers, and it's going to contain a body, right?
Just all of those.
Yeah. And of that information, the method, the headers, that can all be hard-coded by us. However, if we want to be posting things based on user input, that's where the body of the information lies, right? And if we want to be posting things based on user input, we have to be able to make that like dynamic. It changes, right? It's not hard-coded. And to do so, we have to be able to pass it information. Yeah.
What is the accept in the headers?
That I believe is just telling the server what type of information, or what type. Sorry, that is saying what type of information we can accept in return. I believe. Don't quote me on it.
That's not always necessary, but what is necessary is the content.
Yeah, just content type is the only thing needed. In all the examples in the labs, you'll see both content type and accept listed. So the reason we wanted to make this a function, though, is that when we do call post new toys, we can then pass in the name and image and likes, and then in our fetch, we can pass that through to this function post object, right? And maybe I rename post object because it isn't an object, it's a function, and I can name it like create post object. And what does create post object do? It takes in 3 arguments, and it returns, right? I'm returning it here. It returns an object, of which is comprised of the data we need to make this post.
The name, image, and likes, that's something that is from the form.
This key, the reason these is named name, image, and likes is the key that, yes, it's in, if we look at db.json, they all have name, image, and likes. Yep.
Do you think the return was the issue? 'Cause
It was the issue?
Yeah, cause I was getting the same thing.
were you planning
Let's
on
see.
doing the implicit return?
It is the return. No, I just hadn't put it in. I was going to make a point that you have to return what you have, because this is usually an area where people will stumble, is that they'll write their stuff out, but they'll not return anything. I thought it was going to return undefined. That's what I was going to try and show you with the console.log, but it was giving us that syntax error.
To do the implicit return, is that like you don't have the outer brackets? Is that how that works?
Implicit return in JavaScript's only if it's single line.
Single line meaning
And I guess it makes it sense here because I had a naked object. If I said let test equal this, then it wouldn't give me that. And then if we console.logged it, it would give us undefined. So like console.log create post object, we should get undefined here. Oh, or we get the whole, just the whole piece of the internal.
And Nick, just to clarify, I think you kind of just basically said this to answer this, but 51, 52, 53, we don't have to actually declare what name, image, and likes is because it's going to automatically be the value of those keys within the form. Is that right?
Yeah, whenever we call, and we haven't called post new toy yet.
Yeah.
Whenever we call it, it is going to pass this down into the create post object, which is then going to fill these up. Are you guys ready to move forward then? Okay. So if we look at our page here, we have the add toy form, right? Create a toy. And then we have input type. Name is name. Name here is image. Name here is submit. Right? And so this is an entire thing as a form. And this form has a class add toy form. Sweet. So if we look, I don't think we defined it. Let's create a variable for it. So add new toy. Was it a class or an ID? Class. I think it's by class name, right?
You have to put the dot when you say my class name.
No, I'm thinking a query selector. Thank you.
Okay, so when it's query selector, it's way more general, and the way you search by is by using the hashtag, which is the ID, or the dot, which is the class.
Yep.
So when you specify content by ID, you just pass in the name.
Yep.
Okay.
So why do you have to add index 0 here?
Because it's get elements by class name, so it's going to give me a collection, and even if it's just one item, it's going to be in an array.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand that part.
Yeah. Let's do this. I can just show you.
Because there's more than.
yeah, so you run everything with that class.
It still returns an array. It's not just going to return.
Elements, add new toy. Do I have that right?
Specify that it's not, it's just one. Otherwise, it can't.
We have one.
Oh, add toy form.
So we can present one class with that one.
Oh, we have multiple things with that class and toy. So is that what's happening?
No, we just have one, but if I look here, add toy form, right? It's an HTML collection with one element in there. Its length is 1. So get elements, get element by ID. It's kind of the difference between like find and select. find's always going to return 1. So get element by ID. Since an ID can only be assigned to one element, it's only going to return you that element. With get elements by class name or get elements by tag name, those are going to return a collection. And even if it's just one element, it's going to be returned in an array. And so since it's returning an array, which it is here, just the one, right? We can even call dot class name on here. Or sorry, dot length. And we get 1. Since it's in an array, it's the first element, I'm just going to do a 0. And it gives us the actual instance, or the actual element. Yep. Let's see. And also, so if we did this so the difference between like query selector is kind of like find, where it returns one instance, right? And I have to denote this is a class with a period, and this would just return me the one instance here.
Or you could do
The
query.
first one that it finds, or?
The first one it finds.
But
Right.
you could return multiple if you say query.
Yeah, if I do query selector all, now it's returning, you see how it's returning it in an array? So it's everything it finds, which it only found 1 again, but it returns it in an array. So there's just two different ways to tackle it.
If it did have multiple, could you still search by index? Or
Yeah, there was another one. It would be an array of 2 things, but I would just specify what position of those 2 things I wanted. Yep. So I'll just leave this as query selector. But the key thing is, if you use query selector, you have to denote what tag what symbol you're searching by. All right, and then so on this, I want to do a event listener, right? And what type of event are we working with here? Yep, submit, because it's a form. And we should just maybe call this, oh, we actually already created the method. All right, what do we want to do? What method do we want to? Yeah, post new toy, right? And this one here, so post new toy, we will be passing in, you know what we can do? Sorry. We can do it this way. Post new toy. And then here, for like name, image, and likes, we can set variables.
What's the reasoning for doing that way?
I don't know if we can have it invoked in here. I think it's going to give us trouble. So we can create a variable called name, right? So let's say const name equals const image equals const likes equal. And where do we get the information here? This is kind of like Tuesday, Wednesday stuff with transversing the DOM and pulling information off the page.
We're gonna have to get the values of those input fields, right?
Yeah, we can get the values of the input fields. So if I look here, back to this form, if I look at its children, and there's a few different ways to do this, right? But I get an HTML collection. Makes sense? And let's open this form up. So this first item here is the H3, and then the input here, which is the name, and then the image URL here. Cool? So if I wanted to get this one, what would I do on .children? Yeah, I think it's like 1 maybe. Sweet. There's also I can also like find it by attribute name here, but I think this is a fine way to do it as well. So this is .children1, and we named this up top add new toy. And to get the value of an input, that value. Yep. Sweet. Image, it would be the third. And then let's look at likes, because I think they just want to, each toy gets a like of 0. So we start with 0 likes. So I can actually hard code that in. So I don't need likes here. And therefore I don't need it here. And I can just put 0 here. Cool? I do want to make sure that, okay, likes is a number and not a string. Sweet. Starting to kind of make sense here? There are questions on?
So you do not need to specify the like or like?
No, it looked like when we like initiate a new toy, they will have 0 likes. Yeah. So we actually just hard coded it in here. And therefore, when we pass in arguments, we only need to pass in 2 arguments.
What's the add new toy variable?
Add new toy is the form.
Oh, okay.
So it's the entire form, and then the one is this position, so it's the value here, and then the image URL is this value here.
So 0 would be like what, the label or something?
Looking at the form?
Yeah.
Yeah, so 0, if we look at the form, it has 0 as the H3, create a new toy. This is it here. Then we have a break as one of the things here. We have a break, and then an input, and then another break, and an input.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, so I have this event listener. If I submit, it should post a new toy. What is the one thing? So I'm calling submit, post new toy. We look at post new toy. What's the one thing that's not? Let's try it out. This will answer the question. So there's one thing I forgot, right? Create new toy. What happened? Create new toy. Yeah, because it's a submit, it's a form. I have to prevent default.
Can you explain it? That's weird to me, because if you want to submit something, it seems like you don't want that it to happen.
So the inherent nature of a form when you submit it will refresh the page and direct you somewhere else. So it posts somewhere and it takes you to another page, like in Ruby and with Rails. And every time we submitted a form, we redirected. It took us somewhere else, right? It posted to a certain URL. And so with this, we want the post to go through. We want to post to the back end, but we don't want to redirect anywhere. There's no action. There's no like to.
So it does still communicate to the server then?
Yeah, it does, but we want to prevent the default nature of a form and not have it try to redirect us somewhere. That's what we're preventing, the redirect.
Is it correct to say that you want JavaScript to talk to the server and not immediately go with the submit? You want JavaScript to be the middleman.
Can you rephrase that?
So when you're posting something to the server,
Uh-huh.
to the database, you want JavaScript to intercept that communication between the form and the database, so you can see it on the page that's there.
No, so what's happening is on the front end, we have the information, and we want to take that in, we're pulling it off the front end, we're putting it inside of a JavaScript object, right? And then we're using our fetch to make a fetch request to the back end that posts that data. The thing we're preventing, though, is the default nature of a form that when you submit a form, it refreshes or redirects the page. That's what we're preventing, the redirect of a page going somewhere else.
So we're like, go ahead, sorry.
And so my understanding, what prevent default goes to is preventing the, like in HTML is represented by the action, right? By the action.
Yep.
Associated with it.
So form doesn't have an action, right?
Yeah, it might not have any. Let's go. Here's the form right here. There is no action, so it's probably just taking us to Octothorpe when we hit.
That doesn't have a default.
Oh, then I don't understand at all.
Yeah, it's taking us, it's just refreshing the page.
So, are we using form as like a tool, like, hey, we want you to exist here for the user to just create that field that like what the user puts in, but we're not gonna let it do its job, we're gonna let JavaScript do the communication to the server?
Sorry, I was completely zoned out. So I just want to show you, do you see what I did here? I put like actiongoogle.com, and so from where I am in this file, if I was to hit create, it goes to google.com at the end of like the location of that file, right? And so because we didn't have anything, it just refreshes the page. But that's what we want to prevent. That's all prevent default is doing, is preventing with a form the natural tendency of refreshing or redirecting the page.
And it's also preventing the communication that's happening.
There's none of that. It's just simply the refresh, the redirect. What's that?
Wait, so
It's weird. Because I feel like if you use that form, two things happen. It's gonna grab the info that the user puts in, it's gonna save it to the database,
Uh-huh.
and it's also gonna refresh to the next page that we redirected to.
Yeah.
And when you say, prevent that, I feel like it's preventing both those jobs. But the only thing that's happening is like, okay, form, we're gonna use you, but we're only gonna take what the user puts in, and we're gonna stop you right there, and we're gonna use JavaScript to do the rest of the job.
So like we just.
The JavaScript is what everything on the front end that we're doing, right? Where JavaScript and Ruby meet is when we do our fetch, through our fetch. So that post object, the backend will pick up, if it's a Rails backend in Ruby, the backend will pick it up, and we've now turned, this is where these two meet. This JSON.parse means we're creating a JSON. We're creating JSON right here, right? And JSON is language agnostic, and that's what's getting sent to whatever backend we have. Along with some of this stuff here, but this is like the payload. So we're sending this to the backend, and then we're just preventing the default nature of the form when you hit submit of refreshing the page.
What is JSON that first do?
It turns a JavaScript object, which is this,
It turns that
into JSON.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, reverse of a fetch.
It's the opposite of .json. I think for you guys though, like this prevent default, it's you. Every time you have a form, you need to use it.
Yeah. That's the truth, I accept it, I can't understand it though.
And at this point, we shouldn't need it though, right? Like if it doesn't have an action, at least how I thought it worked.
But you see that even without an action, it's just refreshing the page because it's not. It's still taking you to the same page you're already on. The action is pointing you like to what different page?
Okay, so I was just.
Yep.
When I followed the lectures, I think I heard her say like if there isn't an action, like.
Yeah, and I just put that in there, right, to show us that if we have Google, it will take us there, but if we have nothing, it just refreshes it to the same.
Do something regardless of
Yeah.
if you have an action, so no matter what, you need to ignore it.
Yep.
So it's kind of like whatever we want to do with our page. Like if we wanted to just render on the same page, we would prevent it. But if we wanted to send it to a different page.
Yeah, then you could send it somewhere else, for sure.
But we don't have like another page we want to send it to. We just want it to stay there.
Right.
So that's basically why.
Right.
Right, like we don't want the form to call to an action instead of to do the event listener stuff.
Yeah, like if I was entering my credit card information here, right, and I hit submit, it might take me to another page, rather than trying to dynamically render something.
Can
Yeah.
you do that again with like your credit card?
Yeah.
Okay.
So are we okay to put the prevent default in here?
And where would that go? Like,
So we gotta find where.
So we're calling post new toy.
okay.
It would be here, right? So if I look, put a debugger in here. If I go and hit submit, hit the debugger, I have access to that event, which is a submit event. So if I look, and let's just like pull this image here. So I have What am I in? All right. So let's just create like evo buzz. Create new toy. Did get an error. Unexpected token O. Line 54. Did I put something in here? Oh. Cool. Let's see what's happening.
Just curious, why did you know to put the debugger right there versus where
Um,
create position object?
Because one thing is I never really checked to see if name and image are being set correctly is what I thought they were being set as. So that would be like my first thing. And now I can look at name. So those two are good. And then
Is he still the console log on 44?
44. Yes, thank you. That's exactly what it is.
That's what caused unexpected token O?
I think that is because we're console logging here, and then that's maybe we're catching that error.
Oh.
Sorry. We wanted to do.
Do you still need another function?
No, I should be able to console log this. That shouldn't be the issue, actually.
You don't really do anything in that.
We're posting to /toys.
Right, the post, you don't have to actually do anything in the
Yeah.
function. So that should be fine.
Let's see that again. JSON at position 1, post object index.json. So 54 and 41. Name image. And 41. Interesting.
How did, when you create the post object, I know you only pass in name and image, and I know you said you're gonna hard code the lights.
Mm-hmm.
How does the solenoid communicate two things versus three things?
I have just these two things here,
Yeah.
and then I'm only passing in. I have two parameters defined.
Why do we need to,
Oh, okay.
why do we need to parse that as JSON? The body needs to just be a single JSON string?
Yeah. Here, let's go back to this. Maybe I missed something. Oh, it's not parse. Jesus, it's stringify. Sorry, guys. JSON.parse is what you can do as well. Use that in
That's
Ruby.
Parse JSON.
Yeah. You can use body.json or JSON.parse.
Okay.
It's stringify to stringify it into JSON.
Right, you wanna turn, that's what I was.
Yeah. Sorry about that.
Turning all that into a string.
Yes. A JSON string. Let's see. Cool. And then in we console log the return, right, which is has a new ID of 9. It shows us that it's added to the database. Likes are 0, and then here, kind of what Reza was showing, we still have 8, but if we were to refresh, we now have the 9th one, right? So the next step would be to render this dynamically, and there's two ways you can do so. You can do it optimistically, or you can do it pessimistically.
Could you also just have there be a refresh?
Like just refresh the page? You could. It's kind of, yeah, I mean, you could do that. It's kind of like you're then asking the client to re-pull everything down, right? do you guys know the difference between like optimistic and pessimistically rendering?
No,
Yes?
I don't.
So optimistic is when it's like you render to the screen before you actually like send the information to the database. And pessimistic is when you first send the information to the database and then render it on the screen.
Yep, perfect. So before I send this, I have all the information at hand to render, right? So I could actually render a new card before I even make my post object, my post request. That would be optimistically rendering because I'm optimistic it's going to go through with no errors. Or I can be pessimistic and say, no, only render this thing if it actually happens, if it actually comes back to me, right? And so based on the return data of the post object, then I could render it, and that would be pessimistically rendering. For now, we could do, what do you guys want? Optimistically render?
No, I think pessimistic.
Yeah, any particular reason.
Okay. No, that's fine. So we could pessimistically render here, right? So instead of console.login, we could do something with this information. We could render something, right?
I have a question for you then.
Yep.
So,
Yep.
if we pessimistically render something, is that like an extra safety net then to make sure that everything works correctly versus optimistically and hoping that?
Yeah, I think it all depends. I think like if you have your credit card information and you want to be like, hey, everything went through right, you probably would want to pessimistically render because you wouldn't want to tell them like, hey, you're all good, and then they like go do something else and like, oh wait, actually we lied. It was an error we got.
So like if you're on Instagram and like you like something and it turns red, but then you go back later
Yeah.
and it isn't liked, does that mean that they were using optimistic?
It could be.
It actually gets sent
Yeah,
to
I've never been on Instagram, so has it happened? Has it happened?
all the time.
Then they're probably using optimistically. They're optimistically rendering that like.
So optimistic is just to make us happy and
Yeah, it's a more faster feedback, right? And something like isn't that crucial because you can always go back and try to like it again. It's kind of like when you send a text as well. You might see it like goes through, and then all of a sudden, like a few minutes later, you get like a rejected thing. I mean, that's different how that works, but the concept is similar, right? So yeah, like something like likes or hearts, you can probably optimistically render like credit card information, maybe like messages and emails, and maybe like pessimistically render. So we can pessimistically render this here. So instead of this console log, let's create something that's let's say const render new toy. And we can expect to pass in new toy data, right? It's probably an appropriate parameter name because we're going to be calling it here. And for this new toy data, we kind of want to do the same thing here, right? Just create this. Cool. Do you guys just see what I did there? We're gonna build it. Like, we're gonna create the same card essentially. So I just copied and pasted. You could also just create a method that does this and then use that method in both functions. You look like you're thinking. Both of you guys. That was a lot, right?
I'm just waiting to see what you did next because it's kind of weird that you're making another function that's very similar to the previous one.
Yeah, and that would tell me like, oh, maybe I can combine these things, right? Like, if you get it working, that's fine. Maybe that's what we should just try right now. So if I look at what's happening, we're pretty comfortable with this, right? Like, we're just doing the same thing. It's that when we get that new toy data back, we can call our create, what is it called, render new toy card, and pass in that object. And from that object here, we can just build the same thing and then add on to it, right? And so if I try it here, I probably have an error somewhere. 71. Yes, it's this one. Okay. So now if I add a new toy, number 2, and right, I clicked it, and then it's down here. So what I could do is like this looks the same as this, so I can always just like pull these out and make a function, and that's just like,
Wait, can you show the connection how like that was able to render it?
Yep.
Because I feel like the only difference would be able to change the name and add it into a function.
yep. So this toy, when we make this post successfully, we are returned the object that has all that post data along with the ID, right? That's what this is here. We just console logged it. I can console log again. So if I add a new toy, right, this is what's returned here from that post. A successful post will return an object with all the data that you push back along with an ID that's from the database. We okay with that? Okay. And so using that, instead of console log, we called our render new toy. We passed that object in with new toy data. We created a toy card again using string interpolation, and we just used the name, the image, and the likes. And then again, with toy container.inner HTML, we concatenated this onto the end, which was toy card, which is this. Are we okay with that?
Let's continue.
Are you a little confused still, or
I'm totally lost with that.
with
I just don't see the like. I don't understand how it's all connecting. Each piece I can't even tell you how I'm confused because it all makes sense, but then it doesn't.
Yeah. Do you see when we make this post new toy, like what we get back? We just shown that it was that object.
Yeah.
So we're just taking that object here, inner.then, and we are going to pass that object in as an argument to our render toy card here, which is what we just defined. So we can expect this to be that object, right?
Yeah.
And based on that, it's that one particular object which has a name, it has an image, a name key with a value, an image key with a value, a likes key with a value. And let me put this back.
I guess I don't understand like what's the difference between rendered toy card and what was it, new toy card?
Oh, render toy card and render new toy card?
Yeah.
Yeah, so render toy card is when we do our initial fetch toy data, we're getting an array of all of the toys from the database, right? So it's like, let's say 8 things. And so it passes an array of 8 elements into render toy card. This should actually be called render toy cards to make better sense. So it's rendering all the cards. That's what this responsibility of this method is, this function.
Oh, that's making all of them, and the one we just created is making that.
Just the last one. Yeah. So this is receiving an array of toys data, which is like eight objects in an array. And for each of those, we are creating a card and we're concatenating, right? And then we have render new toy card that we're calling, and we're only passing in one object. Instead of an array of objects, it's just one, and that one object is what we just sent to the backend, and it returned to us an object that says, here's what you just created in the backend, this one thing. And from that one thing, we are then rendering.
So that makes way more sense.
Cool. And that's pessimistically rendering because we're rendering conditionally based on whether or not the backend sends us like an okay response with our newly created object. And so like we could do some things like we could pull this out and make it one function and just call that function. that's more cleanup stuff. That's like, it's refactoring. We've just proven it works, right? So I think that's pretty good.
Were you gonna refactor it kind of by like copying all that and then?
What was that? Okay. Do you guys want to keep going, or do you guys want to? What are we thinking right now?
Yeah, I guess it's just like the like.
You want to do the likes?
Is that the last one anyway?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Let's do the likes. So with the likes here, each of them have a like button, right? And we click them, and we want to do what type of fetch request? Like a post, but more specifically, let's think back like Rails. Are we posting a new object? Yeah, a patch, right? Because we're updating something. Because each of these have likes. Each of these have likes here, and they have a like key, right, with a value. So we want to update a current instance in the database and add 1 to it. Cool? So there's many ways we can do this. Every time we create every time we create a new button, we could add an event listener to it. That would be one way. So if we have 9 different cards, we have 9 different event listeners for each like button. Or we could put one entire like button on the whole container and put a conditional there. That's like my preference, right? And use bubbling in that regard. Do you guys want to go that way?
Is that what Bretzel was talking about, where he's like, cover the whole real estate?
Yeah.
So how does that, before you do the code, can you show, when you guys say that, like cover the whole container,
So like,
how do you know that it's, when you click on the actual like, it's gonna work there versus like on the image?
Yeah, and let's walk through this. That's a good point. So if I inspect this whole container, I think I call it toy collection, right? So let's put an event listener on toy collection. It's called toy container. So let's go down here and do toy container. And we're going to put a click. And let's just say like toy. And all I'm going to do is just define like toy here. And just put a debugger in. Cool? So now if I click anywhere inside of this whole container, which is like basically this whole entire page, I should fire that event listener. And I clicked and I fired it. So let's take a look at what was the event. So the event here was a click. It was a mouse event, which was a click, right? So if I do like event.type, I should get click, and I do. I can also look at the target of that, event.target, like where did I click essentially? And it says I clicked over here, and the most specific thing was the outside container, right? If I were to click one of these things though, and look at the event.target, I clicked an image, right? That's the most specific thing I clicked, was that image right here. If I click outside and just click like the corner up here, it was this div, right? If I click here on the likes, that text, event.target, was that p tag. Cool? If I click here, the event.target was that like button. And I can even go further and say, like, what is event.target.tag name? And that's capitalized button, right? So instead of a debugger here, let's just say I do a console.log of event.target.tag name. So every time I click, it's going to console log what the tag name was of the element I clicked on. If I click here, it's a div. If I click here, it's an image because I clicked the Woody image. I click here, that's an H2. This is a P. This is a button. This is a button. This is a button. This is a P image. This is a P again. This is another button. This is a P tag. I clicked here again. This is a div. This is a div. Cool. So if we set a conditional up, let's say we console log a conditional saying event.target.tag name triple equals, strictly equals button. If I click here, what do you think it will log?
Undefined or something?
Well, I'm console logging a conditional, right? Does event.target.tagName equal button? So what is the tag?
False.
Yeah, so this is false, this is false, this is false, this is false, this is true. This is false, this is true, false, true. What about right here? Nothing happens because it's not, the event listener doesn't extend out here, right? It's only on everything inside of here, right? Same thing if I do create new toy. That error is because I didn't put any information to, this is our catch that happened because I didn't give any information to create a new toy in the back end. But right, false, false, true, right? So using this conditional, I can then do something. Like I only need to set one event listener on the entire container, and then I can say if event.target.tagName equals button, then we can do these things. Like, right, we can do things. Cool? And what's the thing we want to do? We want to create a fetch as a patch request, right? So we can say fetch. Can you let them in, Nico? And for a patch request, what I want to do is fetch to toys/ID. So I can use string interpolation here. And then put in, I don't know what the ID is. I would need to put the ID in here, right? So my question is, do we have that ID anywhere on the page here right now? So if we look at the elements, each of these cards, do we have the ID of that particular toy? And it doesn't look like we do, right? But we do know, coming from the database, they all have an ID. So one of the things we can use is a data set. If in this class here, we can call it like, and actually let's just add it to the button. That we don't have to go up to its parent. And we can just say data set, it's data-id equals, and then we can just use toydata.id. So all we're doing is setting an attribute on this button. We're just throwing it on the button because when we click the button, that way I don't have to like transverse the DOM and go to like the parent element to get it. It's just on the button. We're just setting an attribute equal to the ID of that particular object.
Is it gonna show up in the console now then?
Well, it won't show up in the console because we're not logging it, but we can see it in the elements. Yeah, if we inspect with DevTools, we can see that. And then same thing, because I have it here, I want to do the same thing when I create something, just a new one as well when it comes in, right? And so now if I refresh the page, if I look at the elements, each of these has a button that has a data set with what ID it is. I just threw it down here, right? See 1, 2. I can do the same thing. I could just throw it up here if I wanted. It doesn't have to be on the button. I can throw it up here, but ultimately what I want to do now that I have that ID is the event.target. I know if I get inside of here, if I get inside of this if statement, the event.target.tagName has to have equaled what? A button, right? So I know that the event.target, if I'm in here running this, I know the event.target is what? It's a button, right? So I can say event.target.data.id to get that ID from it. That's why I threw it on the button. If I threw it on its parent up here, if I put the data set up here on the div, I would have to say event.target.parentElement.data.id. But it made more sense to put it on the button itself, so I don't have to transverse the DOM.
Confused with that syntax with .data.
Yeah, this is the thing that is a little tricky. So the data dash something if you ever want to make an attribute and throw whatever data you want and throw whatever like information you want in it, you would use the data hyphen syntax. And then after you can name it anything. Like I can name this like, if I name this data Nick, then to access it, I would do event.target.data and then Nick. So, and just to prove that, here, I'll show you. So now if I refresh, each of these has data-Nick equals 5. It's kind of a free-for-all where you get to make your own stuff up here, right? But it helps to kind of follow convention. It's an ID. I'm going to call it an ID.
Let's say that you only added the data-ID equals toy-ID to the like render toy card or the render new toy card.
Yeah.
Would that break everything?
No, it would just mean that if I try to like a toy that was created upon page load, it would work if I set it all right up correctly. But if I didn't have an ID and I try to like a new one I created while I was on that page, it wouldn't. You would get an error because it would try to post to nothing.
Okay.
It wouldn't know where to post to. And just to show you here, so if I look at this card, if I inspect it, so I think we call in our container, I call it toy container, right? That's all of it. So toy container.children is this whole collection, right? All of these things. And let's just call like the first one 0. It's this card here, right? And now if I want .children, I would get all of these internal things. Right, so it's this, I got the all of these things, and if I want the button, I would do, I think 3. It gives me that button, right? And I have this data Nick on here. So if I set like var test equals, and I paste this here. So test is that, right? It's this button. And then if I say like test dot data set, it's data set, not data. So data dot Nick wouldn't work, I don't think. Yeah. So I have to change that. It's data set.
And can you still put that?
And see, test.dataset gives me Nick1, right? And so to access that object, that dataset object, I would just call Nick to get 1. Cool? So I had to change this. So it's instead of Nick here, I want to change that back to ID. And then this is dataset, not data.
Change 67.
Thank you. Cool?
The data set, right? Or data?
No, it's data dash here, and then to access it with JavaScript, it's data set, and then dot whatever key you want the value
So
of.
like, once again, just make sure I understand.
Yep.
If you did data.nick and you do dataset.nick. Oh, sorry.
Data dash.
If you did data dash nick, that means down there has to be nick.
Yep.
Okay.
Or like that, right?
And then the same thing up above.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's kind of a handy thing if you're ever in like, and you'll have to more likely do something that's in the challenge. If you ever like want to pull in data to do posts, when you bring those objects in from the database, take their ID numbers and just throw it. You can throw it somewhere convenient in that card of whatever you're displaying it with. And like again, here is most convenient for the button because we know if you click that button, then I can then call .dataset.id on that button, the event.target.
So is that basically always, can we do data dot anything and give it a value, so that means we're basically always making a hash and a key?
Yeah, the data dash will create you a dataset hash. That was an odd poem. It wouldn't be a hash; it would be an object. But data dash would create you a dataset object.
An object.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool. So you guys,
What would you call it to Google that? Like that data?
dataset JavaScript,
Data set?
dataset attribute,
Okay.
dataset attribute JS.
Okay.
Yeah, data dash star.
Okay.
Yep. Sweet. So we have this post or the patch address correct. Now we kind of got to do a very similar thing we did last time, right? And this time though, we don't have to create a method because we don't have to pass in any information. I don't think. Well, no, we would because we want the likes coming through.
Update the likes.
Yeah. So we want to pull the likes off the page and then add it to it. So let's say update like bj. We can even say like create. This is getting too. I'll just call it update likes object, and then I'm going to put this thing outside of here. Const update like object, and I can expect to pass in a number of likes. No. Yes. Likes. And to get the likes in here, equals, let's just put a debugger in and try and find that. So I go to click on one of these. I'm at my debugger, and then if I look at event.target, it's this button. This is the information I care about, right? It tells me the number of likes. So what if I said like, how does this relate to this? These two are what? I think they're siblings, because if I said event.target.parent element, I get the whole card, right? And if I look here, I can see that the button and the likes are siblings. So I could do like event.target.prev previous element sibling, and I get the likes, right? Dot inner text, and I just care about the first number. Here's a question though. If I get like 10 likes, I don't care just about the first number, I care about the second one too. So what's like a creative way we can get a number out of this string that is blank number of likes? What separates the number from the likes? Yeah, not splice it, but we can split it. Yeah, with a space, perfect. Dot split, and we want to split by the space, and that gives us an array of two things, the number and the likes, and we can take the first element, right? And do you see how like debugger makes it so much easier to do? Because like, that shit's, to try and code that on the other side is very difficult without having interactions with it. Like this is a lot of positive feedback we're getting with the array. We hit enter, we just keep hitting up. So I can just copy all of this. That will give us the number. And just so we know, what is this here? This is a string. So we probably want to do what? We want to parse int that. And that gives us a number. So this is actually what I want to set this value of likes to. It is a lot. Over the page. And I can even look here and be like, okay, I have event.target here happening a lot. What if I was just to do this? Clicked equals const clicked equals event.target. And then I can just copy these, not copy them, but just change this to clicked. It made it a tiny bit shorter. This previous element sibling is really what's pushing us over the edge. But cool, so now we have likes as a number here. And now that we have that, when we call this, we can pass in our, let me move this over, there we go. We can pass in the likes, which we are defining here. And the cool thing is, you see I'm only defining likes if this happens.
Yeah.
That way you're not going to you're not going to have error. Well, because if you're not clicking this thing, this stuff won't work because this routing's all different if it's a different element. So knowing I had this likes, let's go ahead and create the same thing. I'm going to pull this here and just copy paste for now and then change as needed so I don't have to type it all again. This is a patch, right? And all I want to do is pass in the likes to equal likes. So it's only going to update that one.
So do you have to make the likes number, take it from being a string, then making it a string again after it's been processed?
No, and honestly, I might even be able to. I don't know if I have to even parse it as an integer to post it. It might, Rails might take a string with a number and realize that it needs to be a number and convert it itself.
Okay.
We can double check that. It honestly might do that. But I don't want it to be likes here, right? Because that won't do anything.
+1?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? I could also just do this too, because I have this now here, +1. Or I can just say that's likes, and then say const updated likes. Which would mean, yeah, yep. And then pass in updated likes. There's a number of ways to do it.
And that being a string right now is not, or an integer is not going to cause any issues.
Nope. We can add 1 to it because it's an integer.
Oh, sorry. When I mean, like once it's entered into the database, like the fact that it's an integer when it's in the database is a string, that doesn't cause any issues.
Nope.
Okay.
Nope. And again, it might.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, it's an integer in here.
Cool.
Sweet. And then, so we are doing that. Let's see.
Is with your line 80, when you said likes colon just likes?
Line 80. Yeah, likes is likes because what I'm passing in here is updated likes, which I'm then setting likes +1. I can also do it in here and add the 1 to it, but I'm just adding it before
Why
I
is
even.
it likes not updated likes
Yeah.
in line 80?
Because I'm defining it as likes up here.
Oh.
I'm passing in updated likes. It takes it in as likes. That's probably that's a good point because that's a little confusing. You might be like, what the hell's going on? Honestly, to make it more simple, I might just do this: pass in likes and then pass it and make this likes +1. Do it down here. Cool. And then so to finish out my fetch. Then what's next, Linda? What are the 3 things I type after this fetch? 2 of them start with then.
Yeah, so don't we have to change it to like a JSON?
Yeah.
Yeah, do like response and then federal, and then response.json parentheses.
Yep.
And then not then.
And let's just log it right now.
What's that?
Let's just log it. So let's just call this like updated toy, and then console.log updated toy.
Wait, updated toy. Oh, okay, but we're still dealing with likes at this point, right?
Well, we just posted the like, but it's going to return to us the whole updated object.
Right.
Yeah. And then last we can put our catch in there, right? In case anything goes wrong.
Wait, so you're updating the whole object?
Nope. It's a patch, so it just looks at the one thing it will update.
Okay.
But I believe it returns to us the entire updated object. I believe we can see. Cool. So I think that will all work, huh? Let's give it a go. We have this. What is this file not found? Is that a picture, image? Oh, it's because I created that. I'm just gonna delete it out of my database because I think I created something without an image here. Cool. So we like that. We want to like it. Ooh, 404. Toys. Oh, yeah. So let's see what happened there. Toys 3.
It's missing a slash.
Yeah.
In the URL.
Sweet. And if we look, what is the likes? So the whole object got returned. How many likes do we have?
4,
And how many likes are here?
3.
Because we haven't done anything to update it, right? We update it. If I refresh it, kind of like before. If I refresh, he now has 4. But again, if I refresh, 5. Ooh, interesting. Okay, well, this is part of it. So if I hit this, he has what, 7? If I hit it again, how many do we have?
7.
Because
It hasn't.
we're using what's on the page to +1, right? So here 6 are on the page, and I say update to 6 + 1, and then it comes back as 7. But 6 is still on the page, so when I hit update again, 6 is on the page still, so it's just adding 1 to it again, so it's updating with 7 again. But if we dynamically render this to update each time, it should take care of that, right?
Yeah.
So it should increment each time. Cool. So we had that back. Now I had that updated method coming back, updated toy information here that I'm logging. Instead of logging, I could probably do something else with it, right?
Oh, that's when you use another function.
Yeah, I can dynamically render what's on there.
And that was the one I was really confused about, right? Like, no, it wasn't. How there was like a single update for the toy. I think it's way at the bottom, or way above that.
I'm sorry.
Do you remember when I was really confused earlier about like the two methods that seemed very similar?
Oh yeah, this is a little. We're not creating a whole new thing. We're just updating those, so it's a little different. So I'm thinking off the top of my head. I do have clicked in here, which gives me the event.target. What if I was to create a method that I pass in my updated toy that I received, and then also pass it in clicked, so I also know what was clicked here, right? Or instead of logging, I could probably just do it in here, honestly, because I have likes here. So if I say like, I could probably just do it right in here. I don't think I can build an outside method if I want, but I don't even know if I need to do that. If we just said clicked, which is event.target, dot previous element sibling, right, which gives us the number of likes, dot inner HTML equals, and I can probably just do it like this. I think it was a p tag, and so close p, and this is like when JavaScript's fun because you just get creative. And then I use string interpolation and say updated toy.likes, likes, and I might have been capitalized likes. It is, so you'll see if I try it, it's gonna update to 8 but lowercase, and it does, and 9, 10, 11, 12. But we can just change this to a capitalization so the user doesn't know what's actually happening here, that we're replacing the whole thing.
That's pretty cool.
Cool? All right, now if you're like a big stickler, let's look at this then. So we have how many likes? Okay, little green men. Unfortunately, like they're not popular. They have -2 likes. If I add 1 and I add 2, they have 0 likes. They have 1 likes. Ooh.
Oh, you can do like a ternary, right?
Perfect. Yeah, I can do a ternary statement there.
I remember that.
And so to do so, I'm thinking, okay, maybe I want to then just create like a outside function. So I'll say const render updated likes, and let's pass in the event, the target, or let's just call it clicked. And we'll pass in updated toy. Sweet. So let's do debugger, and then if I instead here call in I just delete this, and then I can call that, right, and say render updated likes, pass in clicked to keep that, and then updated toy. So now if we look, I hit my debugger, I looked at what clicked is, it's still that event.target, which is the button, pretty cool, and then my updated toy is the response. So I have that data I'm holding forward. Sweet. So I can say const likes equals clicked dot previous element sibling dot right likes L. So likes element equals click dot previous element sibling, which is like the p tag for the likes, and then we can do updated toy dot likes triple equals 0 question mark, and we can set this equal to const like vocab, or grammar. What do you want to call it?
Like, pluralize, something like that.
Yeah, like pluralize equals updated likes this question mark if that's true. So if it is 0, we get like, right? And if it's false, we get likes.
So if we plug in 1,
Oh, I'm sorry. We want 1 because 0 would be 0 likes still. So if it's 1, we get like. False, we get likes, and then we can return. Or we don't return. We can just say clicked. Likes L dot inner HTML equals, and then we can use our string interpolation. P updated toy.likes, and then like pluralize. Cool? Do you guys see like the benefit of using properly named things? Because as we get deeper and deeper into this, like we're doing some pretty like in-depth shit, right?
Yeah.
And so it's easy to like, that's why I like the separation, and I'd even separate some of this further into like posted objects and whatnot. And then if you get big enough, you just go to different files as well. But now I know like, okay, out of all of this, we wrote all this, like where am I invoking stuff? I'm like, oh, I'm invoking here. These are my event listeners. These are my functions. Like I said, I'd like to have one of just like posting objects for fetches. Maybe we can separate them in a second, but let's make sure this works here. So we are setting this. So let's see. It's still working, but let's go and something. It's funny how that moves it up there. Are these p tags? Did I have these as the wrong elements? P. So if I was to inspect this, it's a p tag. Interesting. Oh, I have a P instead of a P. Okay, that's why it's getting a little bigger. I knew that something was happening.
So you don't need the p tags in your.
No, I don't, because it's the inner HTML. Yeah.
That was my question.
Yeah.
So you would use the tags when you do inner text,
Well,
or no?
I just didn't. I was just creating p tags unnecessary. I was embedding. I was getting confused. I confused myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, where did you get likes L from?
Right here. It's just the previous clicked.previous siblings. Clicked is, so the event.target is clicked. I pass it through as clicked here. So it's the event.target.previous sibling. So it's when you click a button, the previous sibling is this. So that's what likes L is. It's the likes element.
Got it.
Yep.
Should I click your thing again?
Yep.
How does the render update likes have access to click?
We passed it in.
But it still should be available though, right? Because clicked is still inside of a function.
We define clicked here,
Yeah.
and we pass it in here. JavaScript, you have access to outside. You don't, like, this doesn't have, here, I don't have access to likes because it's inside of this if, but in here I have access to this.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. And
So let's see how let's get this, let's try this out. Oh, I don't know what I just did. Okay. And then here, let's set one of these at like -3. Ham. Ham's our test pig. All right, Ham. Don't screw us. So it stays there. It looks good. 0. Ooh, 1 like. 2 likes. Look at that. Pretty nice, huh? Dom Masters.
so when will you like use the actual tag inside of an interpolation?
If we were, we do it here. So we're using string interpolation. We have all these tags we're creating.
Yeah.
When you want to actually create something,
Okay.
right? But we did it like inner text. I was just replacing the inner text of the p tag, and I mistakenly, like, through confusion, put a p tag inside. So it was giving a p tag inside of a p tag.
Okay.
But all we wanted to change was the text, right?
Gotcha.
and we use string interpolation. We could have used concatenation. Like I could change for anytime you use interpolation, you can use concatenation. Like here, I can change this into, I could do this plus a space plus this, right? This would work as well too. Cool. But for me, I like using interpolation just because it helps you visualize, helps me visualize things like spaces and whatnot easier. I think that's everything they ask of us here, right? We can add new stuff. We can add likes. Everything's grammatically correct.
Like, this is on par with what we should expect for the co-challenge?
Yes. Yes. This is kind of a lot, but like let's think about what we did all together.
Yeah.
You have your get or your fetch, where we're just getting the data in, right? And based on that, we have a function that renders cards, that loops over it all and renders one card for each of them, right? And that's it there. We have a create new, and what we're doing is we're posting using a fetch, where we have our post object, and based on the form data, we're submitting that through and posting something into the backend, bringing what's there and rendering a new card based on that. And then we have our update, where we have an update object, right? So if it's just a GET request, you won't have a GET object. But if it's a put, or if it's a patch or a post, you're going to have an object to go along with it. Usually you'll take it outside so it's less space, all nestled together. And that's kind of like the handle you go through, right? So you write you write a method that will post to it. You write your fetch. As soon as you get to defining what your object's going to be, you'll probably pull it out and have a method there. And then you bring that data in, make sure you can get that data. And then once you return it, you probably want to do something with that data, whether it's render a new or just console log it or so forth. It is a lot though. I would say that what I do like about JavaScript though is that it's a lot, but it's all here on the page. It's all logical on the page, where I feel like Rails, there's a lot of things that happen under the radar that you don't see, that you have to rely on. And here, you're really just relying on everything you've written, which is a nice feeling.
Thanks a lot, Nick.
Yeah. So I can wrap up this video. That was a 2.5 hour long code along. I hope you haven't fallen